At some point in life, we are all going to undoubtedly need a paradigm shift. A shift from the first half of life to the second half of life. Sooner or later, there will be a necessary letting go. We will have to let go of everything that is false, everything that is unreal, and we will need to move back towards authenticity, towards what people call your higher self, and to what we call your sacred self. Stress and trauma are a part of everyone's life. The way our lives are socially constructed means that we need to develop defense mechanisms. And defense is the first act of war. War upon ourselves and the way we see the world. All of us are born into a world that is increasing in momentum, in pace, where time and space are the most valuable of commodities. We're born into a stressful life. Our parents are at work and they are stressed, and this means that we are left alone. We feel abandonment. No longer do we grow up in tribes and small communities, as we always have done throughout history. Today we're growing up isolated, alone, and afraid. We grow up with one or two parents who are stressed, whose parents were stressed. They move into a world that requires their time and their space. What we need to understand is that everyone was stressed and traumatized at some point. Barriers and boundaries had to be built. Walls had to be erected. We had to develop certain traits to survive. When we develop these traits, we deeply press down our true emotions. We develop an outer self and an inner self, one that is seen by the world and one that is a shadow that we eventually tend no longer to see. This is how addictions, depression, personality disorders are born. They are created. They don't just appear, and it's not just luck of the draw. We develop eventually a personality, a persona developed by millions and millions of traits that become perfectionistic, controlling, neurotic, and codependent, to name just a few. And this is what we would call necessary suffering. The necessary suffering of being human. When our basic needs weren't met as children, we carry this into adulthood, where eventually the truth will out. The truth needs to set us free, and it is uncompromising with its task. We operate in a world with 5 senses: sight, sound, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. That's how we interact with the world on a very sensory level. Our fears need soothing. That soothing later on turns into addictions, personality defects. It turns into inflammation and disease. Anytime we're in fear, we're entrenched in our personalities, our masks, and our personalities are created on a sandy foundation of fear. Our personalities are a combination of all the qualities and characteristics that helped develop our character, then our traits, then our personality. What we do, how we perceive, how we think, feel, and act, our interests, our self-concepts and our drives, even our emotional patterns and our values comprise this personality. Our brains are hardwired on fear. Everything that we experience only through the 5 senses comes through and is scanned primarily for fear. Our brain is hardwired for survival. Now, if we had a 6th sense, if we had a sense for ultraviolet rays, which are probably in the room with you now, you would be able to know that they're there, but you do not have a sense for ultraviolet rays. Therefore, you cannot see they are there. Just like we cannot see fear is there. For a while, our personalities define our archetypes, who we're going to be. We may be a sage or a scholar, a king or a priest, a warrior or artisan. How we wire and fire has been developed over decades. Our actions every day, every week, every month and every year are subconsciously motivated by the fact that we are trying to avoid our greatest fears. Our most debilitating fears shape and mold our personalities. They build our characters. They make us stronger, yet they close us off. They make us feel powerful, but power means to take action, right action. In other words, to be powerful means to live the life you want to live, an authentic life, a good life. But we become powerless, unable to face our fears and unable to take the actions we want to take. And soon enough, our very own masks begin to suffocate us. Fear of change, loneliness, and failure are all based in fear. Just like rejection, uncertainty, the feeling of being judged are all based in fear. Fear that builds our masks. One of our biggest fears become change. Our fear of uncertainty, our fear of failure, rejection, even our fear of missing out, losing control, or being judged keep us from showing our authentic selves. And if we're not acting from a place of authenticity, we're lying. We're not speaking the truth, and pain and suffering manifest soon enough. Thou shalt not lie really means that we should not hide who we really are from the world or ourselves for that matter. The journey of a paradigm shift might just be the most important journey of our lives. It's the journey we take within ourselves. So our personality that was once there to serve us and protect us and keep us safe and certain starts to throttle and choke us out. Over time, our personalities end up seeking control rather than self-love. Authentic love for self, God, and other. They seek out and desire control, perfection, and freedom from fear, which of course they never find. Like attracts like. That is the law of attraction. Fear attracts fear, and the personality is very limited in what it can attract. As divine human beings, we're on a journey. We're growing every day. We're becoming more conscious. We have a need to heal, grow, and contribute. It's a powerful need that no one can just ignore. First, we must become aware. We must become conscious that we're on a hero's journey, a journey back to sacred self, and we must cross an abyss from certainty to uncertainty, from the known to the unknown, from the familiar to the unfamiliar, from the limited to the boundless. We must take that journey. Knowing consciously that you're on a journey is the beginning of a physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual awakening. We move from being five sensory, from the sensory limitations to the multisensory, and then to the extrasensory, a perception where we can see beyond seeing, where we can start to understand who we are and the journey that we are on, that we are undertaking now. This is true intuitive power. It is the moment we turn from fear towards love. Love is the most powerful emotion that exists. There's no stronger force or energy in the universe other than love. In the end, only love will remain. When we start to use our intuition, we start to realize that something is wrong, that we're addicted, depressed, anxious, and afraid. And we start to seek more. We move out of fear towards love. We move out of the darkness and into the light. Light which we have not had the capability to understand until now. When we move from the sensory to the multisensory, then to the extrasensory, we can use our intuition to set our intentions, to set our course towards finding the pathway back to our sacred selves. The self that does not need depression, anxiety, or addictions. It does not need to be ruled by fear any longer because it is able to bear mystery. It is able to bear uncertainty and the unknown, something which your personality might not have been ready for in the past. Intuition is a guiding light. Oftentimes, we cannot see until we're ready to see, until we need to see. In the beginning of a paradigm shift, we must understand that this whole organism, called a human being, is designed to survive. It is designed to control its environment. And when we try and control our environment, which is an impossible task, we lose respect for ourselves. We lose self-love. We lose love, the most powerful force in the universe, and fear begins to spread in all of its many forms like wildfire. Trying to control a world that we don't understand, that we are unable to manage with our senses, all of our faculties and talents, a world that we are unable to manage with all the senses we engage with it, we start to have feelings of losing control, feelings of fear. They show up as shame, depression, anxiety, and stress. Eventually, we can even believe that the dream of life is a nightmare. With enough fear, we can start to hallucinate, hear voices, or feel like we are being controlled. Our desire for control is rooted in a fear of uncertainty. And so we develop to survive. We create our own defense mechanisms. Our defense mechanisms are like a small army, an army of ego insurgents. Your ego insurgents are the containers for your early emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. Your ego insurgents will do all that they can to defend your personality with the impenetrability of a Sherman tank. But they are not you. They are the mind's outdated operating system. Your ego insurgents that fought so hard for you were so important that they've kept you alive all this time. They've done their job of allowing you to survive. Now, they're hardwired into our brains. This hardwiring works for children and people in the first half of life, but not for those on a sacred quest, on a journey to grow, experience the fullness of life and our own unlimited nature. Our natures are boundless, unlimited. Our ego insurgents have taught us not to speak about these traits and characteristics. They've taught us to keep these things inside. If anyone sees them, they'll judge or laugh or criticize us. So we bury them inside. We bury them, and only a feeling of emptiness, a feeling of loss, a feeling of being devoid of direction reminds us that they're still there. Your ego insurgents develop supercritical voices inside your head that keep you away from self-love and fixated on control. They keep you away from gratitude and judging, and so you can never quite rest. Our insurgents are built on fear and, of course, thrive on negative reinforcement. Our insurgents tell us to check self-love at the door. They tell us we're not good enough. We could always do better. They point, ridicule, and blame. This internal critic is highly unempathic and is strongly rooted in the psychological and the most basal needs for safety, food, and shelter that we have. To find your sacred self, you're going to have to leave the stressed world you were born into. You're going to have to take the reins, and in so doing, take control. But this time, authentic control. Control that comes from a place of self-love. Deep, strong, empathic love. You'll have to leave your culture, your ethnicity, and even your gender behind. Your sacred self is not bound by such things. Divinity knows no bounds. None. It will require a shift in your consciousness, a total paradigm shift. A paradigm shift is a change in thinking, from thinking one way to another. It is scientific revolution of the self that is physical, psychological, emotion, and spiritual. It is not only a personality, a nervous system, or the five senses. It is more than that. It is a sacred self. It comprises a soul, a spirit, a sacred self. You will need to move past your assumptions, thoughts, feelings, perceptions. It is a change that goes beyond our concepts, our worldviews, and our practices. It is a shift from fear and the unconscious to a love consciousness, to an understanding that everything is ultimately rooted in love. If we use our contemplative intelligence long enough and practice often enough, we'll understand that we are all one. We are all brothers and sisters. Perhaps this is why the great St. Francis of Assisi used to say brother sun, sister moon, brother river, sister tree. Paradigm shift is a model or pattern for something that can be copied, just like this world is a carbon copy of the next. So our paradigm shift away from personality to sacred self is the same. Only living 90 to 100 years means that at some point we will run out of time. We would run out of time unless there was an opportunity for a spiritual awakening, a shift into higher consciousness. We do this through practice, and the first part of practice is awareness. Awareness of the journey and awareness of who you really are. Do you know who you really are? Have you had a voice deep within asking you about who you really are, what you're really doing here? This is the still voice that calls us towards waking up. There are 10 strong personality types. There are 10 dominant ego insurgents that fortify and protect our persona, our masks, our personalities. When we get to know the controller insurgent, the perfectionist insurgent with us, leading us astray, the neurotic, codependent, eccentric, the victim insurgent, and the actor, the pleaser, the judge, and the anxious insurgent. When we get to know thy enemy, we start to succeed. We start to truly shift. We start to recover who we really are, letting go of what no longer works for us. And in return for doing the work on letting go of inauthenticity, of fear-based manifestations of personality that we've created, we recover that deep sense of who we really are. And we start to love the self once again. Love is so powerful, it attracts gratitude, surrender, connection. It attracts certainty and helps us recover a sense of resilience. The 10 pathways back to sacred self help us understand a life of presence rather than fearfully running into the past or into the future. We're able to own up, show up. We're able to grow up and move beyond what we created out of fear in childhood, moving beyond what no longer serves us. We start to recover a sense of self-regulation, a deep sense of wisdom, and then we find our courage to lead an authentic life, a courage that helps us understand and sit with our sacred selves and other sacred selves, of which there are 8 billion of us at the moment, all on a quest for authenticity, a quest for light and truth, a quest for love. This is the paradigm process that we embark on today. One step at a time, we'll move through the 10 ego insurgents that are the most strongly rooted in fear. The insurgents that defend us and hold us back from opening up. Insurgents that keep us away from empathy, emotion, and love. This journey is about taking control of the controller, leading your perfectionist, quelling your neurotic, and satisfying your codependent. It is about the alignment of your personality. It is about the alignment of your personality with your sacred self. We dissolve and integrate, then we transcend and include. We don't need to leave anything behind. We just need to take control, take the reins, and become authentically human and spiritual at the same time. And so, this is the journey of how we evolve, of how we return to love through a new consciousness, a collective, universal consciousness based in authenticity. When we realize who we are, fear flees. It runs from us as we develop relationship with ourselves, with the world, and with others. We develop a new social construct, one that is not based on stress and fear and dis-ease, but one that is based on gratitude, community, and belonging. When we dissolve the personality and integrate it, we grow. When we transcend the personality, we become free. And when we start to include instead of separate in fear, we become free. We regain our resilience and our creativity. And we begin to unfold just as life is unfolding. Just as the Big Bang is still unfolding exactly as it was. Light has not changed how it operates because it's authentic and true. Emotions of depression, anxiety, and stress carry low energy. Feelings of connection, gratitude, and self-love carry immense, unlimited power. Power that you will find for yourself again. Your codependency and people-pleasing will be restored to connection as we move from survival mind to thrive mind. We'll develop acceptance. We'll move beyond significance. We'll move beyond a disordered personality to a thriving personality. This is the paradigm shift to power. It moves us beyond disconnection towards love and affiliation. It moves us from the ego towards connection and contribution. When we're contributing, pain dissolves, suffering is no longer necessary. When we're all contributing, we're part of one universal community, a community striving towards love, returning to love. We'll use the 10 pathways back to our sacred selves to discover who we really are. We will learn. On this journey, we will learn how to heal, integrate, and thrive. We'll move from an intellectual understanding of who we are, a sensory understanding of who we are, towards a more emotional understanding of who we are. We will develop our EQ and open our hearts. When we open our hearts, we no longer need to be depressed. All we needed before we woke up was to get deep rest. We're not destined to stay depressed. We're destined to thrive, to love, with emotional awareness. We're destined to create something beautiful. As we are all being turned and created into something beautiful, so in turn, we will create beautiful things. This is simple science and simple math. It is each and every one of our responsibilities to wake up and choose love. We cannot suppress and repress. We'll develop a higher intelligence, a contemplative and creative intelligence, or CQ, is our highest intelligence. It allows us to look at reality exactly the way it is. It allows us to look at ourselves exactly the way we are, and other people exactly the way they are. There are 8 billion people in the world today, all of us with different perspectives and viewpoints. Nevertheless, there is still one singular reality, one truth, that we are all striving to understand, bask in, and explore. At some stage in life, we will discover that what we are thinking will never quite give us the answers that we need. Thinking always tends to end in more and more questions, leaving the mind afraid, seeking control. It leaves the soul unsatisfied. So what we need to come to understand is that we need to go above our thinking. We need to transcend it. I suppose in science we would call this metacognition. We need to go above our intellectual capabilities, our sensory capabilities, and understand why IQ and EQ will lead us to a place where we become the creators. We'll become contemplatives, pulling out of reality from the contemplative field what we choose. And what we choose will be love. What we choose will be joy, bliss, gratitude. We'll choose awe. This is the spiritual and holy journey of contemplative intelligence that leads us back to our sacred selves. Charles de Foucauld said that faith strips the masks from the world and renders meaningless such words as anxiety, danger, and fear. So the believer goes through life calmly and peacefully, with profound joy like a child, hand in hand with his mother. Although we have around 85,000 thoughts a day, the problem is that most of these thoughts derived from our 5 senses are the same as they were yesterday and a decade ago. They're the same as when we were 2 years old, fearing rejection and fearing isolation, fearing being alone. Most of these thoughts no longer serve us, and this is why we find that 98% of people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. Moving beyond your personality back towards your sacred self is a divine place where mind and spirituality meet. A Course in Miracles reminds us that perfect love casts out fear. If fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love exists. If there is fear, it produces a state that does not exist. When we return to authenticity, finding out who we really, really are, we understand that the sacred self cannot be jailed. Our hearts cannot be contained. Our destiny is not to live a life with fear and all its attributes. We need to allow love to liberate us. We need to be conscious that we are creative. And when we start to awaken, we start to create a new self, an authentic self, a powerful, sacred self. We transcend the old, but include it. We dissolve the personality, but we integrate it, and we become meta-human, meta-cognitive. We become creative contemplatives with the power to choose love over fear at every turn. Namaste.